Good morning. Good morning. I am here, honestly. It's just the angle of now how I paint up here and where the angle of the camera is for the painting. So good morning. We're going to paint this beautiful Acer tree today. I'm going to give you a little reminder. Trying to get it lined up so it's straight. Okay, we're going to paint this beautiful Acer tree today that I think it's an Acer anyway, maybe it isn't. When I was out on Sunday with the lovely Susie, we took some really nice pictures. It was so beautiful being out in the autumn vibes. So we'll have a go at that today and we'll kind of make it our own a little bit, but we'll go by that painting. So what I'm gonna start with, I was thinking about this earlier, is I'm gonna start with the blue for the sky, obviously, as I always do, start at the back. Hi Debbie, hi Jayshri. But I'm gonna mix up a few blues to get like a different kind of blue today, like a nice blue. So I've got some Prussian blue, just a little spot of the dark, some light blue and some turquoise blue and some white. So they're my colours, and obviously feel free to paint your own, use your own colour palette to start us off with our sky. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint down maybe sort of 3/4 of the way down here with those blues, so that we've got a bit of a background. So I'm going to mix a little bit on my palette first, mix a bit of light blue, a bit of the turquoise, and kind of see how, actually maybe I'll add a little dot of that dark blue in, and get a feel for what that colour is. And I'm going to make myself like a line so I know where I'm painting that blue down to. So for this sky, we have just got a kind of, well, what I tend to call a flat sky. So there's no, there is a bit of, there's that massive sun that's coming through, a bit of kind of cloud and stuff behind it, but there's no drama really in the sky. It's just a flat blue background. So we're going to start with that, and you know, you do it your way, as I always say. So making that sort of dark blue sort of sky in the background. It's just totally not the blue that's on the picture at all. I'm going to take a bit of white to pale it down a bit because it looks too turquoisey for me. But you play around with your colours in your sky. I don't usually start at the bottom, I usually start at the top, but I seem to have started at the bottom with my sky this time. Yes, I think that's my answer. I think I'm going to use all the blue colours and add in a bit of white. So I'm literally mixing it on the palette as I go. A bit of turquoise, a bit of light blue, a bit of dark blue, and I'm going to put that on and then add some white into it. Yes, this is the colour I want to do in my sky. And one of the other reasons is that because I want to make that bright white sunshine a big massive, you know, quite a statement coming through our tree a little bit later on, then I don't want this background too pale, because I want to be able to see that, the brightness of that sun coming through. So I'm taking a bit of water, all of my blues, a bit of white to sort of pale, like the blue colour that I want is that colour, but I want it a little bit paler. So using the white to pale that down as I go. But as I say, this is a background, and we're going to have, our tree is going to be our main feature here. So I wouldn't worry too much about what kind of sky you've got, as long as it's sort of dark enough that we're going to have that bright sunshine sneaking its way through. Ooh, that's dark. But play around with this in your little way and let it be let it be. I think, like, one of the things I really like when we're painting something really nice like this big Acer tree, like, it's clear that the Acer is going to be like the main feature in the painting, but it's nice that we get a plain background like this to help us loosen up with our brush, with whatever it is we need loosening up with. So we get to paint something nice and plain in the background to just help us feel our way onto the canvas and play with it. So I'm not going to do much more to that background. I'm quite happy with it being fairly blue and just plain. And what I'm thinking of is the sun is going to be shining through around about here, sort of midway of that sky, I think. So making sure wherever you want to put your sun, or just having it in the back of your mind, wherever that light's going to be shining through, that's a little bit darker. But you can always darken that bit up if you need to anyway, but definitely making sure that bit's a little bit darker. Right, what we're going to do next is, even though we've got, what I'm going to paint in this one is, I'm not going to do that little bench that's, I'm just going to pop the picture up again for you, but I'm not going to put that little bench in. I'm going to leave that, I think. But obviously feel free if you want to add it into yours. You see how we've got that lovely pathway? I'm going to add that in a little bit, but I'm just going to paint in some greenery all along the bottom first, of all this whole section, and then we can make that pathway in there afterwards. In fact, we could do it with the greenery actually. Yes, let's do it as we put the greenery in. So we've got that greenery we've got is quite a lot of light greenery, like it's quite light in this picture. But I'm going to use my two greens. So I've got my sage green and my green that's stuck with way too much paint and won't come out. My paints always do this, they just get clogged up. There we go. So we've got this lovely yellowish green, it's called Amsterdam yellowish green, which is pretty much the colour of the grass. But what we can do is we're going to paint in and the sap green. I'm going to use a little mixture of the two. We're going to paint in sort of the curve of that foresty bit round here, and then the rest of it. So we'll leave a gap for the path actually. And when we've done our tree and we've done our bushes and everything, with the grass, we're going to paint in, we're going to have a go at painting in some of those shadows from the bushes, because they look really effective when you put shadows and light in a painting. It looks really cool. So the thing that I think a lot of people were attracted to in this piece was not only the fact that the beautiful sun rays that shine through that tree, which, by the way, Sue and I were standing there taking a picture of this tree, and we were trying to catch that sunlight coming through, and she was going, move over this way a bit, move over this way. We really did have a laugh trying to capture it, and I wasn't purposely doing it for the painting room, but I was doing it because I definitely wanted to paint that sun ray coming through. So we did have a laugh trying to capture it because it kept disappearing behind the leaves. So it's funny. But I think the point of a picture that's attractive and the same in a painting to somebody is when you've got really good use of light and shadows, it really makes it look really cool. So we're going to try and capture that today. So first things first, if you take a little bit of if you dampen your brush, and I'm going to mix this on my palette, but you can do the same, or I do quite often mix on the canvas, but for this purpose I'm going to mix a bit of that dark green and light green together. It's quite a nice colour. And I'm going to sort of just paint a line where the path would be, and I'm just going to kind of guess really, because it curves around a bit like this. And it doesn't really matter how your path is, it doesn't have to be exactly like the other one. Like the picture, like the other one, I don't know what that means. But what you do want to do is make sure that your path, to get the perspective, when we're painting in this other chunk of green here, you want it thin and then it widens up over there. So you want to just have a go at that. Just like, don't be afraid, just kind of paint the edges of that pathway there with your greens. And we can build on that. It's not gonna make a massive difference. And to start with, I'm literally just gonna paint those bits in green. So this bit here, and remember we're gonna have bushes over this, and our big Acer tree, so this is gonna be background stuff, so don't worry too much. So you just want to be painting in where your line came to with the sky. So there isn't really a right way to do this, it's just like a bit of a base there, because we're going to be adding the trees and the bushes, and we'll make a little bit of grass effect there in a bit. So this is like just a base layer. It is always good when you're painting to kind of follow the direction of it. So because that kind of grass bit comes round, it's always good to kind of paint it round. So if that makes sense, so you're making your brush follow the direction of that will be a little bit helpful. And then we'll paint in the bottom section of grass as well. And you can do the same thing. You can kind of paint it round. It is like colouring in this bit. And as I say, hopefully you've angled your path. So that we've got this nice big green bit, and we swoop it around there. Swoop in. Use a little bit of water if you need to make that paint loosen up on your canvas a little bit. But we're just kind of getting in those basic shapes here with this painting. I don't always paint that way. I sometimes just do bits. I paint in different ways all the time. But for today, we're almost like drawing out the shapes first. I do see a lot of artists do that, and I don't really know how to do that, or it doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's the whole point of art. You have to obviously do it in your way, but I see a lot of artists that sketch things out first, and I've actually booked myself on to a little workshop in November. I can't remember if I told you guys this. I might have told you. I booked a little workshop in November to learn how to paint with oils. I've never used oils, and I fancied giving it a go. And on there, I know the lady who's running the workshop. She's a really, really, really amazing seascape artist around here in North Devon, and she sketches everything first. So it's going to be quite a challenge for me if that's what she's going to teach us, because it's kind of out my comfort zone to get a pencil and sketch in things. But we'll see. We'll go with it, and I'm sure I'll either take to it or I'll find my own style and my own way. So we have our basis. So when I'm looking at this background, these background trees now behind our main tree, we've got quite a nice bit of dark green nestled in here, and we've got a couple of trees coming up. So what I'm going to suggest that we do for this next bit is take some kind of mop brush or makeup brush, or something that's what's the word, like stipply, anything stipply that you usually create your, I can't find my other makeup brush, trees and stuff with. I'll be with you in a sec. I've got all these new makeup brushes, but that one's a bit too big maybe. Yeah, I want to put some dark green in first that isn't so big. I don't know where my other ones went. Okay, we'll go with this one. I'm going to start with my smallish. I have like small and medium mop brushes. I'm going to start with the small one, but if you want to, you can use a medium one or maybe use a bit of both. So I'm just going to start with this small one, and I'm going to use the dark green to start with. And I'm just going to start, I want to leave some of this space here because I want to pull up some tree trunks. But some of this dark background, I'm just going to start putting in a few bushes. These ones, I mean, it depends how much you want to go by the actual picture, but there is, over this left hand side, there is quite a big sort of bushy tree thing that takes quite a lot of space. So we can kind of paint that one in, and remember that our Acer is just going to really overtake a lot of this, so don't worry too much. But if you start painting in some background bushes with that dark sap green or whatever green you've got that's dark, and I'm also going to carry on along that back bit, maybe to about here, and just push in a few little. I think this bit is very, very free, and you don't need to worry too much about it. We just want to make a few background things going on here. So you can use a little bit of the dark green, and we can layer this up in a minute. I'm leaving that portion at the end because I really want to overlap that with some lighter greens and make that a bit different there. So I'm going to switch over to my yellowish green, or whatever green you've got that's lighter. I'm not going to take any of the dark off my brush because I don't mind if it's a little bit overlappy with the colours. And I'm just going to start tapping that mop brush in here a little bit to get some of these lighter greens in place. Maybe dab a little bit of the dark green in as well, just to get some different colours going on over here and different I think really the best way to capture something like this is just go completely free with it and just let your brush tap around and keep using the different shades and different colours. So like definitely this bush over here stays quite dark green, so I think I'm going to just leave that as it is. But some of these other ones I'm going to add a little bit of lighter to the front sections of them, so it sort of pushes those other ones into the background a little bit. So we can just dab over those with some lighter spots. It just starts to create that depth in the painting as well. And over here we've got some, sorry, let's just finish this off a minute. And you can play around with this as much as you want to, because you can add, you know, like the last few weeks, I can't remember what we painted last week, or we painted that wave one, but the last few weeks where we've been doing the autumny forest ones, and we've continued, as you've seen, to create the depth with lots of lighter greens and then a little bit of white with that. So I'm going to dab in a little bit of the light green, but not too much on this one. And I might even go back over it with some dark in a minute, because I said I wanted to keep that one dark, but it doesn't quite look right to me with just one shade on it. So I'm dabbing over with a little bit of light as well. And then I'm going to go back to my dark green and just really add some more of that in there. And back to a little bit of light, because that sun that we haven't got in yet is going to be shining on that anyway, so it's not a bad thing. Over here I'm just going to add some darker patches, because I don't feel like I've got enough dark happening over here. And then what you can do, if you like, is I'm going to kind of just swoop in some of those colours so that they're kind of, whoops, we've gone onto the path, don't worry about that, mixing into the grasses underneath. Blending some of that colour in so it looks like it's sort of shadowy on there. So next I am going to take a little bit of green and white to highlight some of what we've done over here, and I'm just mixing those two together on the brush. So we've got a bit of green and a bit of white. Not otherwise, if you just put white straight on, it's just going to be really, really bright straight away. I'm remembering that those sun rays will just be hitting in certain places, so you just want to be sort of dabbing on a little bit of this lighter colour in a few spots. Maybe a little bit more. We'll add a little bit more to that. So a little bit of white and a little bit of green. Woo! That went quite bright. That's what I wasn't wanting to not happen. Never mind. 'Tis what it is. Does look quite cool actually. It's always good to highlight it. And we have got over in this corner of the painting a little bit of the red brownies colours on the leaves, just a little bit. So I might just add a little bit of red and a little bit of sienna. So we've got this lovely burnt sienna, which is kind of like a browny red if you've got this colour. If you haven't, then just use a little bit of maybe red and yellow together to get like a nice orangey colour. But I'm going to use a tiny bit of that. And a little bit of red together to get a bit of a burnt orangey colour, to just dab some of that in over here a little bit, which looks quite nice. Not too much, and then I might take a little bit of white on top of that. Just adding a little bit of colour in there, and that colour is going to match the Acer tree colours that we're going to put in as well, you see. There was something I was going to do over here. What was it? Oh yes, trees. So some of these, like this one here, is definitely a tree. So I'm going to make some little tree looking what do you call it, trees, branches. So I'm going to use a little bit of dark green and the sienna together, which makes quite a nice, again, it harmonises and brings the colours together. So it makes quite a nice brown for some tree trunks. That's the word, tree trunks. So this particular one over here, I'm definitely going to make it into a tree. So I'm just pulling down with my angle brush and making that into a little bit of a tree there. And you won't be able to see it too well. Can you see how I'm just pulling in a couple of little branches? And we can highlight some of that in a minute. And the same on, I'm just going to pull a bit more of that in. Make that a bit thicker there. And the same over here, if you want to pull in a couple of little trees, just adds to my painting's a bit wet. Just pull a few lines down here and there, and they'll just look a little bit like some trees in the background. And remember, our Acer is going to go over this anyway. And then if you want to take a little tiny bit of white to highlight some of those tree branches. And then quite often when I'm doing something like this and it's like, oh, the highlight's gone a bit too much, let me add a little bit of dark again. So play around with it so you get your different tones and stuff. And then sometimes when I've done little trees like that, I'll go back to my mop brush, because I like the branches on show, but I don't like all the branches on show sometimes. So for this case, like, I would go back and just take a little bit of a dab of the greens together and just go over some of those branches just a little bit, not loads, but just a little bit, so it kind of mixes them back into the painting. Okay, and so that's all I would do with that background bit. Obviously you can play around with it and add the depth and keep adding some different colours and things to it. But what we're going to do next is we're going to just work on the path and some of this greenery before we paint our big tree in. You know, you can if you want to, it's entirely up to you. But there is, in the sky, I'm going to do this, just see what it looks like. Just behind the Acer tree, there is a nice big white line. There was an aeroplane or something going past. Well, not something, an aeroplane going past. So obviously I don't know where the Acer tree is going to land yet, but I'm just going to pop in like this white trail from that aeroplane. Oops, it's gone a bit wide. Just with my angle brush and a bit of white, I've literally just used white. I'm just going to take a bit of water to take some of that out. Anyway, my tree is going to go over it. But if you want to do that, you're very welcome to put in a little white line in your sky and have a little go. Before we do some of the grasses over here and the tree and the path and stuff, I'm just going to take a little bit on my angle brush actually as we go. A little bit of that light green, maybe a bit of dark green as well. And I'm just going to pull up, like, there's a few over in this corner and on the edge of this path. There's definitely a few little No, I need to do it in dark because that's a light background. A few little wispy bits of grasses and things. I'm going to turn it upside down because it's easier. And I'm just going to pull in some of those, like using the edge of, we might want to put the path in first actually and then build up on this. But just pop in a few little grasses in and just let your brush kind of be a bit choppy with it along the edge here. You can build up on that with the grasses anyway, if you want to. Just let it little bit of choppiness happening at the edge of that grass. And then I would take a little bit, you know the drill, take a little bit of the lighter colour to highlight them. Just don't make this too much of a, like, you don't need to overthink this one, just pull in a few random strokes. As you know, what I always say about nature is that it's just all over the place. Don't worry if it goes onto your path, because we're gonna play around with that path now to get some nice colours in there. Now that path is quite dark with a little bit of light, so we need to pick a colour for our path. I'm not very good at, not really sure how to make like the concrete colour, so I prefer the earthy colours anyway. So my path, I'm going to be making it with some of this sienna and some green to mix in and get like a nice brown and maybe a bit of that red. Just use some earthy colours if you want to for your path. If you want to have a go at making it concrete, it looks like a grey blue colour that you might want to use. So I'm just going to start by basically kind of colouring that in. We're going to build up on these colours anyway. I'm just using my angle brush here, but you might want to swap over to a filbert brush or something else that makes sense to you. And I'm just going to roughly kind of colour it in with these earthy colours. The rougher it is, the better, you know, the more it'll look like a, hopefully, the more it'll look like sort of pathway rather than okay. That definitely is starting to look like a path to me. Some reds, some greens, some siennas. Scribble it in there. Just let, like, my brush is really dry, and I think it looks more natural when you're just letting it all kind of be patchy and not be all, doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to take a bit more sienna and green. Just let my brush like wiggle around and be we're going to put some of the green and stuff over this anyway. So you can add a little bit of black in if you want to your path. You might want to do that. Just go really gentle though if you're going to use any black, because I'm sure I always say this to you, but it's very strong and dominant colour. So I'm just going to add a little bit of, I'm going to grab some sienna, some red, I haven't really got any green, but a little bit of green. And then just a tiny little dot of black. Yeah, that's probably too much, but we'll give it a go and see what happens. Just mix them in and see what happens, because you can always paint over things. And I was just going to darken up. I'm painting wet on wet, so it's just pulling out the paint half of this, but I was going to darken up some of that side and then take a little drop of white on your brush as well, and we can put in a few light patches over here. And you can always go back and take some of the sienna colour and just blend that in a little bit. Some of those light patches, and then you can take a little bit of white just on its own if you want to highlight that, to highlight those whiter bits at the edge of the path. And then if you go back to the red and the sienna and a bit of black again, and maybe wait for it to dry off a little bit if it's not working, but just sort of stroking, like just putting strokes in so that it's just got different choppy colours and stuff in our path, in our little pathway. Okay, starting to come together now, isn't it? Starting to take a little bit of shape. So then what we're going to do is this. Oh, with our greenery here, before we paint our tree in, we just want to start highlighting some of this grass. So I'm going to use a fan brush. I think that would be a good starting point. And we're going to take a bit of dark green and a bit of light green. And you're going to need a bit of white in a minute. I'm just going to take the dark green to start with, maybe a bit of light with it. Let's see. Yeah, we'll just add a little bit of light to it. Just a little bit, so you've got the two colours. And we're just going to start like very gently, just pulling in, just tapping. I'm just really lightly kind of tapping the fan brush on here to get in a little few grasses, and you want to do that like all over the grass. At the edges of the grass, at the edges of the path as well, that's fine. Just tap, tap, tap in. Mainly with the dark green, because we can highlight it with the light green after. Just let your brush, like, if you just do this little tiny dabs, you're just going to get little impressions of grass, but if you pull it up more, you're going to get longer bits of grass. But you just want the dabs really. So just let the fan brush kind of dab and pull up a little tiny bit. And we're going to highlight this to bring it more alive in a bit anyway. And try not to, which I know is quite tricky, but try not to just go in straight lines as well. Just let it kind of tuft around a little bit. Just kind of dot, 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 dot. It just starts giving it a little bit more impression and a little bit more depth of grass. It really is like quite free Just let that brush dot, dot, dot around. The more you can let it dot around and be free, the better. And just push on it and unpush on it. Load it up with a little bit more paint every so often. You're going to get darker bits and lighter bits. Okay. And you can do a little bit of this at the edge of this path here as well, and across these grasses if you like, to give that a little bit more depth at the top. Just tapping that fan brush around. The looser, the better. And you can do it along the edges of the path here as well. Okay, so once you've done the dark green, you know what's coming. We're going to add some highlights to those dark green bits with our lighter green. So just taking that on the tip of the fan brush and very gently dotting this around. Very, very gently, because it's going to jump on there quite quick. Just dabbing it everywhere. Sort of across the darker bits. But just letting that brush dab around. So at least that's starting to look a little bit like a field now with some grass in it. It just takes a little bit of time to build it up. Don't be afraid to let those grasses just flick over the pathway. It's quite gentle, but also you've got to kind of tap hard if you like. Don't forget we're still gonna add another little bit to this. We'll add some white to it in a minute to really start highlighting some of that. I think that's quite like starting to look pretty good now. Really starting to look pretty cool. Right. And then we want to, I think, still use the fan brush. The fan brush works pretty well for doing these little grasses. So we want to switch over . Sorry, one sec. Why is my battery saying? That's fine. We want to switch over to a little bit of green and white, but just go gentle on the white. Like I would put a bit of white on your fan brush first, onto the palette, and then add a little bit of green to it. Otherwise it's going to be super highlighted. And at the moment we don't quite want that. And we can just go over what we just did, just very gently in a few places. Just tapping lightly on the top of some of those darker areas. What we're going to add to this field in a minute as well is some little fallen leaves. Just going to look really cool. Whee! So I'm going to pull some of that grass up there at the edges of that path. Just let in the, I think longer grass is a lot easier to paint. So if you want to paint it longer, I might do that. It's hard to get the little short strokes and stuff, so I get it if you want to paint some longer bits. I think with the grasses you just have to keep going and keep popping in the colours and keep building in the depth of it, so we'll be here forever. But we want to put in some fallen leaves on here, and we want to paint in some of our shadows now before we do our little tree. So to paint in some little fallen leaves, we want to take the colours that we're going to use on our tree. So for me, I'm going to be using these siennas and reds and maybe a bit of yellow. Yeah, I probably am going to use a bit of yellow in my tree, or a bit of ochre. That's the colour, ochre. So the ochre colour, so like a browny yellow, is really good for, if you look at the, I don't know if you guys have got the tree in front of you, but if you actually have a look at this tree, yes, it appears very red, but there's a lot of ochre-y, browny colours underneath at the base. So what I'm going to do is take a small little liner brush now, and we'll give it a bit of dampness, a little bit of damp. We're going to take a little bit like the mixture of the path and those little bushes we did in the background, a bit of sienna and red, and maybe a little dot of white in there, just a little tiny bit. So we're getting a little bit of these colours, and then we just want to like tap some of these, dot them around in the field. It doesn't really matter where they go, just making little strokes all over the place for the fallen leaves. So we do a few of those, whee, bigger ones, smaller ones. Just let your brush dab, dab, dab. You can take a teeny bit of white and highlight those ones if you want to. Just literally pop a little sort of dot of white over them, over one edge. I'll show you up close in a minute. So all your little leaves have got a bit of a highlight to them. So I've just got a few there in that colour, in the sienna-y reddy colour. And then you want to swirl your brush out and take a little bit of the ochre. Let's see if it looks all right on its own. I might just add a bit of sienna to it actually. So a little bit of ochre and sienna. And if you haven't got ochre but you've just got the main yellow colour. Just do a few yellows with maybe with a little bit of red in them, or a little bit of black, or whatever you want to add. Just go really gentle if it's black. And we're just putting the, you know, we're just dabbing. We're just dabbing around. Just make little dabs. Wherever you want those leaves to fall, you can have some leaves on your path if you want. That isn't strictly in the picture, but I think they look cool if they're just floating around on the path as well. And then again, add a tiny little bit of white to those leaves that you've just painted. Just a little dab on the side, just gives it a bit of a highlight. Don't forget, this is a painting, so it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the whole point. Okay, so we're just dabbing those leaves, dotting around. You can do as many leaves as you want. You can do more leaves, less leaves. It's entirely up to you. Just have them dotted about. So for our shadows, what we want to do, we won't do the tree shadow yet because we'll paint the tree in first and do that. But there are a few shadows from these bushes, and we're just going to put in a little bit over here, maybe a little bit in over here, just to kind of practice that. And what we want to do is take our mop brush, and it can be a little bit damp. That's a good thing. You can take a little bit of the dark green and have it, and then dampen it. Actually, it would be really good to just dampen that. And let's see what happens when we have some dark green and some damp water. And we just want to mirror what's above. If you've got too much water and it's not doing anything, then just add a little bit more paint. And we just want to sort of pull this down. So you want to dot around, so you're like making the shape of what's above. You've got to be a bit brave here and not worry that you've just painted over what you've just created. And you want to pull that down over the dark grass, over the light grass. I'm not sure if that's showing up enough, so I'm going to take a little bit more paint. And add that in there. So it looks like the shadows of those trees, hopefully. So all we're doing is the same colour, but a little bit of water. I think that does show up. Does that show up? That's kind of showing up, isn't it? Maybe add a little bit more paint. I'm going to leave that one for now, and I'm going to just do a little bit. I'm just going to pull it down a few of these. It's a little bit like when we do the reflections in the water, really. You just kind of dab in and pull in. So some of that darker green, and let it go over the path. It's fine to go over the path. Just so we've got some shadow in there of these little trees. I think that's working quite well. And the same over this side. There's a lot of shadow over this side. So we want to just dab that in on here and pull it down that way. We can add to this in a minute because once we've painted our Acer, we'll add. And what we're going to do when we do our sun, when we put our sun in the back of the Acer, is we'll pull some of those sun rays down as well. So these darker bits, don't worry if they're not too dark, because our sunlight will highlight that. So just do a little bit and just have a little play around with those little shadows there, but they look quite cool, I think, on that right hand side. But we'll get our tree in first and then we will finish off shadows and light. You're gonna have to excuse me for 1 minute because I'm absolutely dying for the toilet. So I'll be back in a sec. Talk amongst yourselves and we will get ready to paint our tree. And I'll be back in a minute, okay? Right, get out, fly. Okay, back in the room, literally back in the room. Okay, hi Sue. The angle that I have my camera now, I don't see who's on because it's over above my head. If you want to, you can make little shadows from these from the trees as well. See, so the little trees that you've put in here, again, just take a little bit of water and a little bit of that dark green, and you can always add in some extra shadows of those, pulling down, pulling across like this with that green. Okay, it just gives it a bit of a bit more depth. It really is just pulling in those darker areas to get that shadow and light in a painting. Anyway, we'll stop with that for now because we can add to these. She says, carrying on. So let's paint our tree. Let's paint our Acer tree. I'm going to use my little liner brush to paint my tree. And we're going to use some, you can use some sienna and ochre or any of those colours that make like nice browns. You can add a little bit of dark green in or light green. I'm going to go with the light green that's on my palette. So I'm going to start with a bit of this light green. I'm going to add some ochre to it and add a little bit of sienna to that to get me a nice browny colour. You can add a little bit of red in as well if you want. Just get yourself a nice browny colour to paint your tree. Now our tree is kind of over to the right here, so a little bit here is our base of our tree. That's a little bit red. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of black to that just to darken that up. Not too much, but just add in a few strokes of black to get it a bit more browny. So I'm just going to start with that little tree stump there. And then we can start pulling that up, painting as we go if you want to. But this one's quite, like, the leaves start coming all around here now. So what we want to do next is just start growing up those branches. So I'm going to use sienna and black and a bit of ochre all together. I'm probably gonna, am I going to turn my canvas upside down? No, I think I will go for it. So now you just want to start wiggling and start letting your brush pull out all these amazing branches. Yeah, it's quite a slim tree, this one. That's gone quite dark there, never mind, be all right. But it's got a lot of wiggly branches all over it. So don't be afraid to let that don't usually paint trees like this. I don't know what I'm doing. to let the to let lots of branches come through. I'm going to go upside down a little bit to get this main branches coming up. And you can just let your brush go with the flow here and let your tree start taking shape. Remember that you don't need to worry too much about these branches because the leaves are going to be all over them. So let your tree be weird, like mine. I'm going to swap brushes. This brush isn't working for me. So I'm going to use a slightly bigger angle brush. And I need a little bit more sienna. Sienna and ochre and maybe a little bit of black, maybe a bit of red. And just letting your branches wiggle out and do what they gotta do. And using a little bit of water to help the paint loosen. And don't be afraid, like I know a lot of people can be sort of afraid to paint over that background, but it's really okay to do that. So just letting those branches, I find this brush the easiest to wiggle off those little branches here and there, but you might want to use a what's the brush called? A liner brush. You might want to use the liner brush. Can't get my words out today, sorry guys. So keep playing around with your tree. It doesn't really matter where the branches go, to be honest. You can have as many branches as you want, and you can have them hanging out. Over there, over here, little branches, other branches. You can make your tree wiggly. Or not wiggly. I play around with branches for ages. And then you might want to be like, oh, they need to be thicker, they need to be thinner. The base of the tree might want to be a little bit wider. You can take a little, if you take a little bit of water now, once you've done the base of the tree, you can pull some of that shadow in now from that tree. A little bit of water and a little bit of that dark colour would look cool. A little bit more water and let that shadow come across there. Looks pretty cool. So once you've played around, like, you can play around with your branches forever, like I say, you can just keep going, but we'll just do a couple more and then we'll start with creating some of our lovely autumn leaves on this tree. And then I will let you finish off. So we'll start with our leaves. Actually, those shadows look really cool now. You can really see the shadows underneath those green ones, and that tree shadow is pretty cool. And you can play around and add more shadows if you want to. I'm going to add a little bit more of those green shadows over here in a bit. But let's play around with making some maple leaves. Now this tree kind of goes up and out, so I'm going to start with one of my little makeup brushes, and I'm going to start with a little bit of water, and I'm going to start with that ochre, the ochre colour, and maybe just dab it in a little bit of this sienna, and I'm going to start with some of that as my base of building up this tree. And I'm going to purposely kind of make the leaves go up and out a bit, you know, like the picture is really. And I'm just going to do a few of these with this colour, just dabbing that on there, because we're going to add the red to it after. But that looks quite nice actually with those two colours. And you can just dab around on your tree wherever you want to. Again, as I say, if you haven't got the ochre colour and sienna, that's fine. Just use some yellows and reds, because these are just our sort of base colours here to get this beautiful looking autumn tree. Really nice, those ochres and sienna, because they kind of look golden. And I'm just sort of dabbing the brush and letting the leaves take form themselves. I always forget to like put all the leaves in here as well. I'm always forgetful of that, and I leave the trunk so you can see it, but there are quite a lot of leaves on this tree. And they go everywhere. Isn't that starting to look really, really nice? Just even with that on, and we're going to build up the lovely reds yet. So a bit more. This is the fun bit. I love painting leaves. I love it, I love it. Oh, I need to make sure I paint a little bit over that aeroplane mark, so it looks like it's going underneath. That's pretty cool. Yes, that's really starting to come together, isn't it, chaps, ladies? So what I'm going to add to now, I'm wondering whether, might work. I'm wondering whether it would definitely work better. I'm not going to get the right kind of colour for that red that's beautiful on here. It's really nice, sort of pinky, crimsony red. And I was saying to Sue the other day, I really want to get some nice crimson paints, but we'll have to go with the colours we've got. So I'm just going to take my fan brush and pop a little bit of green on and just dot around the base of that tree a little bit, just to kind of take out some of those stumps. Maybe a little dot of white with that green, just to kind of, it just sort of embeds the tree into the ground there. So back to our beautiful tree. Oh, my tree is definitely not taking the shape. I haven't ended up doing the shape of the same. Never mind, I'm not fussed. But this one definitely kind of goes up in the middle. So if you want to do that, you can shape your tree up a little bit more in the middle. Maybe I'll do that with the red. Let's see. So I'm going to take some sienna this time, a little bit of the sienna and some of that red, and see what happens, because I'm not sure what colour we're going to get, but I'm going to leave some of that golden underneath, and I'm going to start tapping some of this red on the outside. Oh, I think I picked up a bit of white there. That's all right. Yeah, definitely if you want to shape this tree a bit more, you can. on the top here. So this is the fun bit, because we get to bring all the colours, all the nice autumn colours in. So the sienna mixed with the red, so nice. But leaving parts of that beautiful ochre on show underneath. There isn't really a rhyme or reason for this, I don't suppose. I think you just dot your leaves about. This is how I always do trees anyway. Just let them kind of take their own shape and form. That's really nice now. Okay, it might not be quite the colour of our tree that we have in the picture, but I don't care because it ends up looking really lovely with those reds on there in that nice autumny way. How beautiful is this painting? Really beautiful. And you know, I'm pretty sure I always say this, but I love the fact that it doesn't look just like the picture. I think that's the whole point, because it's supposed to look like you have painted it. So you just keep playing and dabbing around with your reds. Now, if you want to, and I'm only going to do this in a few areas. Oh, we need to paint in our sunlight, don't we? I'm going to take a tiny bit of white in there with that red. Not loads, and I'm dabbing it into the red. So we kind of got a pinky colour on the palette. I don't want it too pink, but I do want some highlights on this tree of a little bit pinkier in places. So I'm just going to do a few little bits there. Not too many, but you build it up and do what you want to do with your tree. Okay, so what else do we need to do? We need to finish those. I'm going to go back over that shadow, this one here. So just using a little bit of the colours from our tree. Oh, I ended up with white. That's not what we want for a shadow. Must be some white on that brush. I'm also going to go back to a little bit of the dark green with it, and all it is for shadows, I think I've said this before anyway, is just the colour that you've used in whatever it is you've used above, and a little bit of water, just the same as when we do the reflections in water. And you can start off lightly, and then so you can put some more shadowy bits in here from our tree if you want. So just dotting about and then pulling it down this way, because it would be quite shadowy over here. And from our tree here, you can add in some more shading over here if you want to. My brush is a little bit damp, so you just have to play around with the brush not being so damp. I'm just popping in those patches there. And it doesn't look like too much, but I know when I'm holding it up to you guys, you can see all those dark patches, so that's really cool. I think I might go over this with some green actually. So I'm just going to take a little bit of green and add it into the tree. I'm just playing around here. Okay, I think that's enough shading. That's all. I'm just going to do a little tiny bit on this one. That would just be a little bit of reflection from the tree. I think that's enough really. And now to finish off our piece, and obviously I'm gonna let you play around with your tree, but to finish this off, we're gonna put our sun ray, we're gonna put our lovely sunshine in. I did mean to put some of this in before we did the tree, but never mind, that's all okay. Don't worry, we will figure it out. I was just gonna do a white a bit in the sky to have like the place where the sun is shining out. Now, if your tree isn't, mine's dry enough so it's fine, but if it isn't dry, then just dry your piece off before you do this bit. And all we're going to do is we're going to take a filbert brush. You're going to take a little filbert brush, a little bit of water, just a tiny bit, and we're going to take just some white to start with. We'll see how we go. We might add some colour in. We'll start with white. Just a little bit. You want your brush kind of, even though we've just dampened it a little bit, we want it quite, not much paint on it, so we want it sort of dry. And wherever you want your, I'm going to put my sun in here. I'm just going to paint in a little round sun. Now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of water on my brush and then dry it off a little bit and just pull some of that white around. Now we are going to end up, we're going to have to paint over our leaves in a minute because you're going to end up pulling in some of that. So we need to just dry that off. But it actually looks quite nice with some of those colours in the background, and just trust this. I know this is a little bit backwards because we probably should have done some of this before we started, but that's okay because we can go back over the leaves in a minute. So we're just going to dry that off. And then we're going to like swill your brush out. So we just put some white on it again. We've done this before when we've painted suns anyway, I'm sure we've done this in here. And we're just going to paint back in that middle section. So you've still got that bit happening around the edge, but we're going to paint that bit in there. As I say, I know it looks a bit crazy at the moment, but bear with me. Then we want to swill our brush off again so that we have, so it's a little bit damp. And again, we want some white on there, but we don't want loads, and we want it just on the tip of the brush. And this is where we get to pull out our sun rays now. So we're just going to start by pulling those sun rays down and across the canvas wherever you want them to be. Just take a little bit more white if you need it. Just let those sun rays fall in between the shadows. And quite often when I paint sun rays, I do them all around. So we'll let the rays go everywhere. We'll paint that back in a minute. But if you think about it, I'm just going to paint that middle bit back in again a minute. So you can do that yourself as well. But if you think about it, the sun just, it really does just like go everywhere. Those sun rays, those sparkles, they do go everywhere. So you can paint back in your middle bit. And soften it around the edges if you want to, again. And just let that come out. So when it dries off a bit, just keep repainting in that middle bit. So it's nice and bright. And beautiful, sparkling through the tree there. Now it's up to you. You can go back over some of your branches, or you can leave it like this. I think it looks really cool, like just really sparkling itself out there. I just think they look, I think paintings look really nice like that. You can really take a very small bit of white if you want to, but I would keep adding to these sun rays if you want them to, you know, just let them shine bright. Let them shine bright, let them cast down further. I think it looks really nice in a painting when there's lots of sun rays hitting over those shadows and stuff. So yeah, it's entirely up to you. You can take your little brush and go back over some of those trees. So if you do decide to do that, just take the little thingy brush and just highlight some more of these. But I personally, I think it looks good with the sun rays being the brightest, boldest part. So I would leave it like that, but it's up to you because it's your painting. And if you want to, I would still do some more on that middle bit. So if you want to keep letting it let it dry off a bit, add a little bit more white. Just keep adding to that. So there we go. That's our beautiful painting today from our lovely Acer tree. So my phone's going to die and the connection's going slow apparently, but there we have it. I can't wait to see you guys and your paintings and what you do, because it is such a beautiful piece. And I'm just so glad I went out with Sue and took these lovely photos. So just keep playing around with your sun rays and finishing your piece off, and don't forget to sign your piece. Okay, thank you for today, ladies. I've really enjoyed this. Just a quick one actually. So next week I'm going to Spain. Yay! And I actually travel on Thursday, so I will put in the group on Sunday a little day earlier for you guys to share which pieces you want to paint that week, because it's your turn to choose next week. And excuse me, we'll be painting on Wednesday. So we'll paint on Wednesday, probably the same time, maybe a little bit earlier, we'll see. But I'll pop the post in the group and let you know that what we're doing. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing your creations. Bye.